welcome everybody at Shopware United Meetup. It's a third meetup which we are organizing, and this time we are going to focus on PWA and headless solutions for Shopware. But before we start, just a short introduction who we are as Shopware United. So Shopware United, officially it's an association, and our goal is to help community to grow. So if you had been in touch with us, or if you meet us for the first time, we don't have any particular product. We are more a community of people who are really engaged, who really believe in open source, who really believe in sharing and educating people. And we're trying to help people like us who are ready to share their experiences with Shopware, who are ready to participate, organize in events, exchange work on the education. So if you have any ideas, if you look for community, if you would like to engage in some of the activities, please let us know, especially if you've got any ideas for activities and you're looking for a support. So our role is to help you use our connection, use our support to stimulate the growth of community. So again, looking at this, we try to improve also the communication between Shopware. We are in some way also an official channel where we can share experiences, where we can show what we are doing as agencies, as customers, how we are using Shopware. So example of those activities for Shopware United are those events meetup. So today we have a meetup about PWA. I'm organizing this meetup. My name is Boris. I'm CEO and co-founder of Strix and Shopware agency from Poland. And today we are going to this event. Today it's going to be more a panel. So I would like to discuss all the different topics related to PWA with 4 panelists. With Patrick, who's CEO and co-founder of View Storefront. Patrick, if you could just say 1 or 2 words about you.
Hey guys, so as Boris mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder. I've been with View Storefront from the very beginning. There is a summit next week where I'm going to talk about the history of View Storefront, so feel free to join. It's on the 20th. I'm also talking about when and how it started with Shopware. I remember first time I visited Shopware in 2019 for the very first partner meetup. And this is how everything started. So it's been a long journey until now, almost 2 years from the first conversations we had. So I'm happy to attend the panel and share some of my experiences and thoughts on that.
Great. I invited Patrick because Patrick is representing a vendor who is providing PWA headless solution. So he will have, I believe, an interesting overview on the market, on the current situation with current projects related to PWA. The second panelist is Isa. He's a founder of Yero, and his focus is on, he's like a trainer of developers, and he's also an organizer of Reacticon event. So Isa, if you could say a few words about yourself and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me here. I've been actually maybe even shorter in the Shopware community than Patrick, because my story with Shopware only started about more than a year ago, I think, because of a Reacticon being organized and then suddenly Shopware popping up as a sponsor as well. Personally, I'm dealing with developer training, and I've been doing that for the Magento community for a long time. But yeah, so a lot of Magento developers are currently in this call as well, and I think the reason for that is we slowly got the insight that Magento is maybe a perfect solution, but not for everything. So Shopware is a delightful alternative, but I'm also there in the PWA movement. Both in the pro movement and the anti movement. So I as a trainer, I try to inform developers as best as I can, and I try to counter say whatever Patrick says to say praise to Vue Storefront. But yeah, let's open up the conversation. I'm happy to join in that.
Sure, great. The third panelist is Paolo, co-founder and CTO at HCE, an agency, a Shopware agency from Italy, who has an experience and I think was one of the first, or if not even the first agency who implemented PWA, a headless project for Shopware 6. Paolo, like two words about yourself.
Hi, nice to meet you, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I founded HC.it with my partner Emanuele like almost 20 years ago. We've been in the Shopware community for not for a very long time. This is probably our first project. We have other projects with Shopware, but the PWA project we are going to talk about is like our first one overall. And I'm a board member at Rabbit Hole Group, which is a democratic partnership of agencies, mostly from Germany, but including us from Italy, and with whom we share insights, projects, and some of them are Shopware partners as well. That's one of the reasons we went for Shopware, that we knew some partners who were very, very satisfied with it, and so that's why I'm here, basically.
Cool. Yeah. So my idea for Paolo joining this this event was to present like an agency experiences and customer experiences, yeah, from a real life project with PWA Headless and Shopware 6. And the fourth panelist is Maciej, who's representing a developer side. So he's a Vue Headless senior developer at Ergonaut, just also to have a point of view from developer, how hard it is to join and how hard it is to start with headless implementation. So Maciej, just 2 sentences about yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maciej. Thank you for invitation. I'm a Vue Headless developer. Like I'm really into the headless solution. I'm glad to for the one who invented it. And yeah, let's.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Maciej, I hope will represent completely different approach, like from daily basis work of developer who's working with the headless solutions. Because we don't have any presentation, I will stop sharing so we can just more see each other and have the discussions. If any of you would like to have any questions, then please you can put them in the chat. We'll now go through some questions and discussion between the panelists. But also at the end, you will have a chance to have a direct question and ask if you have anything important. So starting with
Boris,
yes.
Could I just interject 2 things?
Sure.
One, I'd love to. I'm just about to put in the chat, or I have put in the chat, the link to the after event networking, which is on the WonderMe platform. Have a look at that, and that's where we'll go afterwards. And the second thing is that there is another event that's already planned. I'll also put a link to that in the chat as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So after we finish the discussion, the questions, yeah, we'll have some time to have a direct connection, the same as we had during the Shopware Partner Day. Great. Okay, so starting with PWA, I'll have my first question to Patrick, because there are many misunderstandings about what's PWA, what's headless. If you could explain, exactly how the definition looks like, how you, from the vendor perspective, look at PWA, and what is the difference between PWA and headless?
Yeah, so it's been ongoing for, I would say, many years now, and I was confused myself for a very long time. And on the beginning, we just called Vue Storefront is a PWA. That's it, right? But as we evolved and as we were going further, we realized that PWA is just one of the features of the headless builds. And also what has been a very big misunderstanding, and I'm happy that there are a lot of people. I hope that a lot of people will watch it afterwards. I'm repeating this every time I have an occasion. And now I can refer to Issa, because I remember the very first time I visited ReactCon. It was my birthday. Philip was talking about, you know, the Vue storefront next and everything. It was in 2018. I'm going to mention that on our presentation on the summit. But Issa had this T-shirt with the headless chicken, right? So now the question is, how front end can be headless if front end is the head? Front end is bodiless. So now how we call Vue storefront, how we call Shopware is a bodiless front end because it comes without the body. And in that case, Shopware 6 becomes a body. The Shopware experiences, the CMS systems, they are also the body for the head, which you put on top. So I think this has been a very big misunderstandings, and it just all went into the one like headless architecture because you can put it there. But if you talk specifically about Shopware PWA, I would say is a set of different components, is the architecture of the actual head that you put on top of headless systems.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. I'm having this question, you know, and again, just also to have this clear, because many people are mixing PWA with headless, and when they say PWA, it's hard to find out what exactly they mean. So the next question is, so why a merchant that is implementing you know, Shopware would like to have you know, a headless solution, a PWA solution, and support like both applications, so there's head and the body. What are the benefits of implementing PWA headless solution?
Mm-hmm. I would say that in general, we should focus on the user experience, right? For the user experience, you have the mobile first design, you have the speed, you have the flexibility, ability to change things quickly. And the most important, in the developer side, everything is decoupled, right? So you can work independently on the head and on the body, and then you just connect those together. So I think PWA in general is just allowing you for introducing a much better user experience. And this should be the overall focus. And I think if you're going to look at how everything is changing, the traffic will continue to grow on mobile. And I believe that at some point it can be over 80% in some industries. This is the way to really address it. It's very hard to come up with this truly mobile first design on the standard storefronts. With Shopware PWA out of the box, a very brief example, so people can imagine what we are talking about, is the bottom navigation bar, right? It's the very simple rule of thumb. So when you have, like, I think it's iPhone 10, it's very big. I have no chance to reach my screen with a thumb. With the standard mobile design, you should have everything that you need to navigate, like search, the navigation bar on the bottom of the screen, which is a standard in the native apps. So I was always asking myself, after working so long with native apps, why it is not available on web? It's such a common sense user experience failure, right? Most of the sites, top navigation, it's search bar on the right side, navigation on the left side. You need two hands to navigate. Bad user experience. So I think this is one of the biggest benefits, and the fact that you can decouple it. So there are benefits for the business, which is speed, which is user experience, mobile first design. Another one is for developers, so they can develop in a much more flexible manner.
Cool, great, thank you. Issa, a question to you, because you work both with developers and agencies, you know, on training and different materials. So, what in your opinion is a perfect project for such a headless and PWA solution? You know, what features, what requirements, or what customer designs qualify the project for headless implementation? As you mentioned before, like with Magento is not for everybody. Probably the same PWA headless solution is not a solution for every and any project.
No, and I think that's also the difficulty when talking about, so for instance, Shopware PWA. It's kind of like new technology, and the commercial answer would be to say like, well, any project could be ideal for Shopware PWA. But I think the reality is that if you're new to Shopware PWA, you're going to be overwhelmed with all of the technology, depending upon like where you came from. And I think also that maybe the first project that you're going to do, my advice would be to take it slow. Because, well, if you're switching to Shopware, your first experience is going to be that you're going to be overwhelmed with things. If you're starting with Magento for that part, the same is true. So also, if you're diving into Shopware PWA for the first time, I think it's going to be overwhelming. But yeah, so I've promised myself to be kind of like the developer or the devil's advocate to try to counteract a couple of things that Patrick mentioned. And I think that like the difficulty is that there's all of these benefits that flow out of Shopware PWA, out of Vue Storefront for that matter. But the difficulty is that maybe your own project is not in need of all of those features. So one of those features is push notifications, and that's an awesome little thing. Another one is the menu placement that Patrick talked about, or the footer placement. Another one might be offline behavior, but it's basically all of those different buzzwords that people are talking about. But I think the actual question that we need to answer ourselves is, well, out of all of those different features, which features are actually fitting in with the actual project that we're running, and how much does it make sense to actually ship that project with Shopware PWA? For me, that's kind of like the difficulty. So the commercial part would be saying any kind of project is fit. The negative part of me says like, well, take it slow. Just make sure that you have that project that is allowing you to adopt Shopware PWA in an easier way. But maybe there's also the more practical side as well. The Shopware front end on its own is based upon Twig. It's based upon Bootstrap. It's based upon theoretically technology that you're already familiar with. And then suddenly diving into Shopware PWA requires you to become a Vue developer. So I'm always forcing people to first make up their minds whether you like Vue or not. Because if you really, really dislike Vue, you're not going to like Vue Storefront, and you're not going to like Shopware PWA. And I think that's shaping kind of like that answering the question is just really hard. I'd rather have people get slowly into Shopware PWA, get used to the technology, get used to the knowledge that they need to have, before suddenly jumping into a project and then finding out that it's more difficult than they thought. Or theoretically, the opposite, right? Theoretically, once you start the first project, you don't want to do any other project without it. But yeah, be careful with that first choice. That would be my main takeaway.
Okay. Patrick, I would get back to you with the question, because Shopware comes in some way, we could say, out of the box with a dedicated headless solution, which your team was working on with Shopware team. Can you say what exactly is available with Shopware? What is out of the box? What kind of feature? What kind of support comes with this solution? And just to confirm, something we get with Shopware, it's not like a Vue Storefront. It's like a dedicated solution for the Shopware PWA.
Yeah, exactly. That's quite important to mention, because from the very beginning, it's a very native integration with Shopware 6, which of course makes it much easier to the rest of the community to join and start working with it. So it was customized just for the purposes to work with Shopware 6. In general, the whole happy path is very similar to what ordinary Sovereign has. The only difference is that we changed the design to follow the mobile first principles. You can browse the catalog, you can see the different product variants, you can use all of the filters, you can proceed to checkout, place an order, and manage your account. So basically everything you need to run a standard e-commerce front end. So that is part of it. Then you have this API first design where we connect with Shopware 6 APIs in a very easy way, and the whole structure was made so developers shouldn't have any problems, and you don't have to do any kind of like your own APIs in terms of middlewares, right? So everything is going directly to Shopware 6. And if any of you were working with our previous version, we call it now Vue Storefront 1 and Magento, there was a middleware that you had to use, and in some cases that was problematic. And of course, all of the PWA features, so you can add it to the home screen, and all of this comes out of the box. And we wanted to make sure that, probably you heard or know about Storefront UI. If not, you can check it out. It's Storefront UI.io. That's the Vue.js component library, and the whole Shopware PWA is based on that. So we wanted to make sure that a lot of components are ready, but also you get like a cookbook how to create additional components. So they are easy for developers to understand. So even if you want to customize this storefront and create additional components, this should also be relatively easy. So you get the standard theme, you get a set of components to customize that theme, but you also get the cookbook how to add new components to it.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Paolo, I think now it's your turn, because we know what's PWA, what's with Shopware, how to start. Can you share your experiences? Because you are one of the first agencies who implemented headless solution for Shopware customer. If you could tell us more, how you approached, why you decided, and how you convinced this customer to implement a headless solution, and how was the implementation, going on?
Okay, so the story began like at the end of 2019, I think, when we were approached by the customer for the website I'm putting in the chat, which is the project we're talking about, and it's a vintage clothing shop in Venice, who were a bunch of forward-thinking people and wanted to expand to the web, because they were doing very well in Venice, but they wanted to expand worldwide. And obviously, the reasons to do this project with the Shopware PWA are several. One can be the idea that with PWA, you have some features like push messages, for example, to users who accept to install the PWA. You have some features that are part of an app, of the app world, without the cost of developing an app for this project. Developing an app, being it when it's Ionic or some kind of intermediary framework, or when it's can double the cost of the whole experience. And if you develop two apps, one for in native code for Android and for iOS, then you can triple the costs, considering all the development, etc. And with PWA, you've got a very big advantage of having a lot of the app feeling, because you have smooth transitions. You don't have to wait for things to load. You have push notifications. You have a quick way for the user to put your site on their home screen. So you got lots of advantages of an app, but much less costs. And that's obviously a big advantage for you can present to the customer. So you're going to have something very similar to an app without the costs of an app, without the requirements and the maintenance and the development costs. So that's very attractive at the beginning. Another reason is the request for the customer was to do something very extreme, something that will make eyes turn, like make some splash. And we went for, although the communication was done in-house by ourselves and was all focused on the new tolerance, LGBT, gender fluid things, which are vital for the target demographic for this kind of site, because people buying 80s and 90s vintage clothes are kids, like in high school, or young people at university, and they have this kind of mentality that they don't care if a jacket is for a guy or a girl. They just wear it. And we also wanted to go down the 80s rabbit hole of nostalgia and video games and stuff. So to do all these things, like to do something that was really striking, there was a total requirement to use something like Vue or a reactive framework. Obviously, we have long experience with Vue. We've done very complex site for major agencies as like technical developers and stuff. And so we know how to do transitions, how to do animations, how to do things that will look wild, interesting, and involving to the end user. And so the objective was to be able to do that, and the customer asked us to do that, to do something that was some sort of groundbreaking. And obviously that website got an AWW award as like site of the day on Easter Day, by the way. And obviously one of the objectives was to have a site that could win an award, could get all of the free traffic and SEO advantage that you have to having very interesting inbound links from case studies, from awards and stuff. And so to do this very extreme website was a win-win situation in that respect.
Can you share with us also how the development looked like? Because as you mentioned, you probably found a perfect customer for such product who really was looking for a kind of something fresh, something new, something extreme. And I assume they understood that it's a new technology. So yeah, there might be some challenges, there might be some issues. And how the whole development looked internally, especially like if you could share something with us as developers, agencies, what kind of surprises you had, what were the biggest challenges on the development side?
One of the challenges was that when we started, Shopware PWA was alpha. And so some of our developers kept in touch with, we decided to do that in spite of it being alpha, because I looked at the code and I liked it. I looked at the principle and I liked them. And so I had the impression, or maybe almost the certainty, that one way or another we will be able to develop something functional, because the Shopware APIs are pretty manageable. We have experienced Symfony developers in-house. And so it was very easy for them to develop custom plugins and things. It's very easy to develop custom plugins in Shopware once you get a hang of it. It's just a matter of exercise and understanding a few principles, but we already had them because it really looks like Symfony, and you have to, the big hurdle is to know the way Symfony works on the back end, in my opinion, like where to put the files, what are the principles of extending things, and what are the points of extension that are available.
So, Paolo, could I jump in? I'm not sure if that's the format, but I'm intrigued also. So you mentioned actually something that I claim often as well. If you're a backend developer for Shopware, you need to know about Symfony. And you mentioned also that on the front end, you had experience with Vue already.
Yes.
Nuxt also?
Nuxt on smaller projects.
Yeah, and then basically, could you ever recommend people to jump into Shopware PWA if they don't have any Vue or Nuxt knowledge yet?
Well, on a smaller project, I would say not on. But we got lots of help from the Vue Storefront Shopware PWA guys, and they were very helpful at every step. But we also developed lots of code in-house because we had some custom requirements that weren't in the standard default layout. We did all the filters for the list are completely custom and done by ourselves internally. What I would say is that if you've got front-end developers in-house, and all they've done is, let's say, vanilla JavaScript / jQuery / Bootstrap / standard non-reactive development, I would say no, 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 and then no. You have to get at least a lead that knows what I'm talking about reactivity, because the jump to reactivity, to a reactive environment, be it React, Vue, or Svelte, which are all viable options, is a paradigm change. It's completely different way of doing things. When we did our first Vue project, it was very difficult for many of us who are like very skilled JavaScript developers with experience, with long-standing experience, to understand all of the principles of how you would just turn the flow of data inside out. It's a completely different way of thinking. It's a completely different way of developing, and so developers need to have their mindset change. So you at least need a senior who's well versed in reactive frameworks, and I would say switching from Svelte to Vue is not a big deal. They look almost the same to me in many respects. I don't know about React because we've done minor maintenance of other people's projects in React, not the full development. But obviously the mechanisms are the same, and so switching to Vue might be a breath of fresh air because things are a bit easier to do in Vue than in React, because it's it's like the third, fourth such framework historically, and so they learn from everybody else's mistakes, and so it's very lean and clean and easy to use and not over-engineered, which you can say about Svelte as well. It's not over-engineered. Sometimes they might be under-engineered, but difficulties. There was a paradigm switch in using the composition API, which is relatively new for Vue. It's in Vue 3. It's a plugin in Vue 2. And that is obviously something very interesting and solves lots of problems with huge scaffold projects with lots of components that need to share some part of code, especially when Vue is all, you got the component within a component within a component. And the big challenge is obviously to have them communicating properly without having everything loaded in the store or called in the store from every component everywhere. That's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, when a project gets like more than 3 levels of components. And composables are very useful because basically you can skip a lot of boilerplate code and share functions easily between different. It's like when you've got a site hierarchy, which is like you got like the categories one above the other, like a tree, and like normal website, but you got pages connected by each other via tags, like in like a tag system that can connect tags in different branches of the tree. And composables, composition API does something similar to programming. You've got a hierarchy, like a big tree of components, and composables allow you to jump, to have functions jump traversally across the tree very easily, and without a lot of the problems we've had with other big Vue projects. So basically, it was a difficulty to learn at the beginning, but once you got the hang of it, the composition API is very, very powerful and very, very useful. And having a strong PHP background, can I say PHP? Yes, it's Shopware here, so I can say PHP, not not get stones thrown at me. And with PHP has got crates, which are very similar. It's basically a similar concept, and we knew that, and we used that extensively. And so basically, you can share some kind of functions or characteristics between different objects in PHP as well. And so that is similar to the composition API and in concept. So knowing that, the composition API is fairly easy to grasp.
And you mentioned that that you got started with Shopware PWA when it was in alpha. So at that moment, there was no composition API yet, right? Or am I mistaken?
I think it was there from the beginning. I've led the development here, but I haven't done much underneath the bonnet, to be frank. So I know they've been using it. I knew the principle, and I haven't. I think it was there already.
Yeah, and Paolo, and looking
it
at
was
some,
very close to beta. Sorry.
Yeah. You probably had some timeline, you know, at the beginning of the project. Could you share with us if you get into some serious delay because you had to learn everything? Just as an example for the other agencies who, as you mentioned, would have a similar situation. So they already know Vue a little bit, and they would enter into the project. So how the project timeline look like? Did you get into a big trouble, big delay, or you managed to do it based on the estimates?
Well, you know, COVID happened in between when we started the project, and then so it's very difficult to make a comparison between estimated time and real time, because every like many things like skipped or got delayed or got stopped or things. I would say that we were within budget, but we had some delays in terms of time.
Okay, and can you share with us the results? Because as a result, yeah, you mentioned you got the you get the award as a site of the day. What about the performance, Google Page Speed Insight results? Anything of that?
Okay.
What are the benefits, you know, from the merchant, except of this, of course, spectacular front end? If you haven't, it's I think for the rest of the guys, if you haven't seen, Paolo just pasted a link to vintageria.it in chat. So if you want to see this website, you can go to chat and find this link and click and experience the site on your own. How does it? What were the results from Google perspective? Did you get a good surprise? Nice benefit from using PWA and Headless?
Well, it was not a switch from a previous website. It was like it's a startup. So we had no comparison with the past. What we know is that we have a good conversion rate, a very, very low bounce rate. The bounce rate is abysmal compared to other e-commerce websites we know of and we work on. Like we work on other projects with other agencies and stuff. A lot very big customer fidelity. Like they stay on the website, they're curious, they're interested, and they stay longer. And I think it's part the fact that the interface is engaging, but I think it's also a PWA thing that since the transition between pages is so smooth and not let's say not jumpy, like when you change URL in a normal browser, it's more involving, it's more of a flow, and so the user I think gets more or less uninterrupted experience. It's like watching a movie. That's what I always liked about Vue applications as opposed to standard websites. And our customer keeps an eye on the end customers who buy the clothes, and some people said most people said, I love the website, I could keep coming back to look for new things, and I wouldn't have bought here maybe if it wasn't for the website, for the way the website is and so I think the benefits are there. A startup takes time to develop. It's not like you ever get like thousands and thousands of sales in a month. It's obviously one expectation that every e-commerce customer has when they start is that it's like opening a shop and having everything running immediately, etc. But it keeps growing and growing. We see a steady growth of users. Clients are the end customers, the end users are happy and buying. And concerning Google, obviously you've got a big hit in terms of Web Vitals, because it's not as optimizable as a standard HTML website, because you have a big payload of libraries to support, of JavaScript to support the PWA. But we, with lots of work on optimization and sculpting and let's check this, let's check that, we got good mobile results anyway. What I don't like about Web Vitals is that they seem to penalize you. Just think about just the first page, the first URL, which is sort of unfair, thinking that when you switch pages in a normal website, you have to reconnect, and the change in pages within a PWA is almost, it's not, it's very quick. It's a much better experience. So I think the Web Vital statistics are unfair, meaning that they give too much advantage to the first load speed and little to the customer bounce rate. We have a very, very low bounce rate. Google, being everywhere within the statistics, will probably notice that for a website and give us extra marks on the other side, because if you have like half the bounce rate of another e-commerce website, you're always doing something better. And according to my experience in these years, usually Google is good at telling when you're doing something better than other websites.
True. True. Great. So it's a great story. Yisa, we mentioned Vue, or we mentioned React. You are the founder of Reacticon, an event which focuses on modern front-end technologies. So I think you can compare React to Vue. So what are Vue benefits, from developer perspective? How to convince developers to start with Vue? How you see those differences between Vue and the React?
Yes, I think that's my most favorite question. What's better, React or Vue?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hear the answer.
Well, remember, you said we are recording, so take it slow.
Exactly. Yeah, but so I'm not going to answer. No, I'm going to answer. But it's a silly question somewhere. The difficulty is that you're comparing apples and pears. And the difficulty there is always that we could compare Magento and Shopware as well, but we could compare PHP with JavaScript. And the difficulty with all of those comparisons is actually, I think that the reality is that they're all still popular because still we have different needs. The only thing that I could maybe comment upon is basically what Paolo mentioned earlier as well, that Vue in general is still easier to get started with, while with React, a lot of times actually the developers busy with React are kind of like trying to over-engineer things. And over-engineering is sometimes good, because that leads you into the most perfect solution. It leads you into the best practices and so on. But I think also that not everyone is in need for that. Not everyone wants to get 100% quality at all different levels, but some of us are just fine with a lower quality, if that actually translates into a lower total cost of ownership, for instance. And I think in general that's something that you could say that another comparison, Mac or Linux. I think actually that Linux is comparable to React. It's more technical. It leads into a lot of transparency. What you see is what you get. But that also comes with the price that you need to dive into the technical details, which makes the learning curve of React more difficult. However, with Vue, you get a Mac. It's beautiful from the start and it's fairly simple. But I also believe that actually once you start diving into the details, if you're not good at JavaScript in general, but you're liking Vue, then sooner or later you're going to hit that brick wall. You're going to think it's a lot more difficult than you understood. And I think the composition API, for instance, is one of those examples, because it's more back to the nature of JavaScript, and it requires you to be a JavaScript developer. It's just that with React, you hit that wall much earlier. So the learning curve with React goes up steep, and then it becomes easier. With Vue, it starts slow, and then it becomes more difficult. And it's a little bit up to you whether you like the one or the other one. I personally also think that it's literally a personal preference. So what I often recommend people is to get started with React, build a stupid little React app in a couple of days, and then do the same thing in Vue to make that comparison. And that's basically where you need to start off with a little bit of experimenting just to see what you like.
Cool. I think it's a great idea. Okay, question, Maciej, to you, because you're a developer. So how does it look like from developer perspective? Where your case is like you were thrown away into Vue project. So how you learn it, how you started, what were the first step, what were your experiences from a developer perspective?
Okay. Before I answer for that question, I will also speak about the React. Like React is really hard to start. I mean, not hard, but it's harder to start than Vue itself. So yeah, that's kind of true. So back to the question. Okay, so my background is kind of in mobile native apps and desktop native apps. So I had like bad feelings going into the web development, because my only experience was like programming the shaders in WebGL, in pure JavaScript, and I knew that it's not gonna be like something easy. I mean, HTML is not reactive, and there's no reactive at all. You need to build everything by from scratch. So that was my kind of world that I didn't want to really. So the one thing which convinced me to try doing web apps was the project itself. Like without that, I could even not be there here. So I started learning. I thought I would learn about Vue and all of that stuff at the Stack Overflow, but back days there was nothing about Vue at Stack Overflow, and it's still pure. But thankfully, there's really great documentation, because Vue itself is really easy, and I think there is no need for Stack Overflow at all. Comparing to other languages like C# or Swift for iOS apps, you need that, because documentation is really hard technical. Like it's hard to understand what they are trying to tell you. But Vue, compared to Vue, it's like I was really in shock. Like wow, it can be that simple. And so the first 3 months were really hard and tough to change my mind, because I had like I didn't know exactly what the reactivity is. Because in mobile everything's reactive. Like you don't have to think about it even. It's just natural. In like it's working as assigning anything to the variable, and it's giving you the correct output. You know. So yeah, it was the hardest part. So
yeah, and how does it look like on a daily basis, your work? Because you it's not like you're working alone on the application. You've got backend guys working on the PHP. You have as Patrick called it, yeah, the body and the head.
yeah.
So what are the inconveniences
Yeah.
for developer with such approach?
I think the hardest part of it is like making a contract with the backend guys. And also I could say that there are two ways of doing that. The one way is like the front end is going ahead of the backend, so it's the harder part, because at the front guy you have to think about what actually backend will bring to you. So and it almost always ends like you need to change something. And the second part is like the backend is preparing the API which you will connect to, and it's the easiest part. And I think that's the biggest inconvenience. Like you have to think about and you have to know about the backend too. Like knowing the backend and backend architecture is giving you the much clearer and easier way to develop the headless app. Like,
okay, great, thank you. Isa, and from your perspective of someone who is preparing materials for developers to train them, like what would be the best way from a developer to start and start working with you with Headless? How you would advise them? What should be the first steps?
Well, of course, join a Shopware PWA training in the near future.
Sure.
But without self-promotion, I would say actually that out of all of the different applications that you could build, ranging from a simple Hello World example towards, I don't know, a blog towards e-commerce. Actually, e-commerce is one of the more complex scenarios that you could build. And therefore, if you have zero knowledge of Vue, zero knowledge of Vue Storefront / Shopware PWA, I think you're going to be overwhelmed. So therefore, my recommendation would always be to start it slow, start playing with Vue in a more easier confinement. Or theoretically, if you're working together with a team, and there's already kind of like a more experienced Vue developer that is able to do all of the e-commerce parts and state management and maybe also advanced things like offline behavior, etc. So that the more experienced developer is taking care of that, and that you as a beginner are just busy with playing with Vue in a simpler way. And that basically means creating Vue components. I often say that if you're a good Vue developer, you should be able to create a new Vue component in a matter of a minute, considering that a Vue component is only like a shell of further HTML, CSS to be added. But then basically the skeleton of that component should be easily created so that you're creating just a lot of components on the fly. And if you're still not familiar with that, well, do that 1,000 times, and then you gradually grow into it. So practical experience is, I think, actually one of the vital things for Vue in general, and therefore also for Shopware PWA.
Great, thank you. Patrick, and as a vendor, you have an experience with onboarding new agencies. Yeah, you talk to many agencies, they come to you with some ideas of the projects and so on. So what is this most successful agencies are doing? What are some, some tips you could share with onboarding developers or starting projects, looking at your portfolio and overview, what kind of patterns you could see looking at agencies and developers approaching the project? What is the most successful way to do it?
So I think that probably the most important way is to read the documentation before you start doing anything. That will save you so much time. And it's like, you go to any kind of exam, you don't read the question and you try to answer that. It doesn't make much sense. So definitely those that are starting with documentation, it even, visible on some of the questions, because if you go to our Slack, by the way, we're gonna migrate to Discord. If you go to our Slack and to Shopware PWA channel, sometimes we get the questions that we just know, if you read documentation, is answered already. Right? So when you ask such question, you are making a fool of yourself because this is in the docs. So the first most important, ask the right question, make sure that they are not in docs in the first place, because obviously not everything is the docs. Once everything is in the docs, we are very soon also gonna start some additional supports and trainings. Isa is also doing that. So I would say invest in getting some of the know-how at the first place, because again, this investment will save you a lot of time on learning. Very often people say that it's much better to just go hands-on practice and do it on my own, but in my opinion, that's great when you already have the basics covered. Otherwise, you're gonna spend more time and burn more hours trying to figure things out on yourself, by yourself, instead of going and trying to get some training from the right people. So I would say that this is exactly what we see from the most successful agencies, that they spend some time before going forward with the first implementation. And also it's important to assign the right people on that implementation. And I think Paolo did amazing job doing that by having experienced guys. So they even managed to make an amazing implementation starting with alpha version, which is not easy, right? The docs were not there, so they had to figure out a lot of things. And then what happens, you assign the senior guys, those that are already with a very big experience. And then we always suggest to do this like in-house knowledge sharing sessions, where the senior developer can basically do the presentation and share his knowledge to the younger developers on the agency side, do some examples, then do some code reviews, pair programming, proof of concepts. So we even suggest, if you are an agency and you have a client that is currently on Shopware 6, take their site, try to make a proof of concept of that site based on Shopware 6 and PWA without really even talking to them. And then you will also have a chance to maybe do the upsell, right? You go to them, say, hey, look, we invested into that. It's great. Have a look. So usually this is something you would do as a sales process anyway. So this is also a great stuff, like work on the real examples and real issues instead of doing some imaginary demo shops. It's always the best kind of approach.
Cool, great. You say I will get back to you because you mentioned it, and I think it's a good place to promote it. Like you recorded some videos with Shopware 6 trainings. Yeah, it would be perfect if we can get some links here, because it's, you don't have to be ashamed of it. You should promote it. But the question is, do you have already covered, or have you covered some of the PWA aspects, or you have some plan about it? If you could share some stuff with us.
Yeah, so me and Shopware, we worked together to create that video series, and it formally started with trying to introduce Shopware 6 towards Magento developers. Well, we got Ben Marks, so somehow we did our work. But then we also dived into basically any kind of topic that was interesting to Shopware 5 developers. So anyone could just dive into those videos. I think the majority is backend development based. So let's say about 70 or 80%. And then the rest is basically divided between the current front end based upon Twig and so on. And then about 4 hours, if I'm right, is still focused upon Shopware PWA, or maybe a little bit less. But the planning is to do more videos on Shopware PWA, as Shopware PWA itself is also gaining momentum. And so definitely there's going to be more material for that around.
Okay, cool. So just Herbie helped us. Yes, so all the trainings are available on academy.shopware.com. So if you need a link to those videos, then you can go to chat and have this and click on the link to learn about it. Okay, so I think we know more or less know how it's to start. The tough question is, and it's maybe a question to Paolo, do you think you could compare a typical Shopware implementation comparing to PWA Shopware? What do you think the budget, would the budget for PWA implementation be bigger? How much in percentage you would say it's more work comparing to going with the standard front end? I know everything depends, of course, on the project and scale, and you had a very specific project, but with your experience, like right now, how you would compare it?
Well, I would say if you count the front end part of your original estimate, I would say it should be 50% more, maybe,
okay,
of your expected cost of front end. because especially for the first project, because it's obviously all of the interaction. I mean, if you go for, well, let's make an assumption, like a premise. Some websites are just change the colors, add the logo.
Sure.
If you change the colors and add the logo, I'll expect Shopware PWA to do everything, almost of the stuff for you, and then it can take care of other problems or like integration, product hierarchy, pricing, discounts, all of the technical parts of managing the product within the shop, which is some things that you will do for your client usually. If you're going for a custom experience, saying, okay, I'm going to do custom graphic design because my customer doesn't want his shop front end to be like everybody else's, and has specific image needs, requirements, company colors or custom communication or fonts or stuff, then I would say you will have lots of work to do with Shopware too, like with normal static non-view front end. But if you want to go, the PWA route you're obviously gonna do it also because you want to do fancy transitions, because you want to do some cool animations, because that's one thing that can be much easier in Vue than in standard vanilla JavaScript. In my opinion, Vue just lends itself to making all of these interactive things. It's faster in the end to do very complicated stuff in the front end in that case. And so I would say, yes, let's say 20-50% more. But it always depends. It's very difficult to,
yes,
estimate is the most difficult part of my job, to do a money time estimate of a project is it's like predicting the future.
Yes,
and
we have this crystal ball, and we are usually using this crystal ball to do it quite often.
What I know is that I'm usually correct. I'm off 20% on either side, and I hope that I'm always in the middle on average. But so it's very difficult to make that kind of estimate.
Yeah, but it's not like that this project is like 3, 4, 5 times more resources for the implementation, of course, not considering the first one, that it's a kind of similar scale of the project and the budget. Yeah, because 15-20% difference, of course, assuming you have an experience, it's not a big difference. Yeah, looking at the benefits that you could get with the front end flexibility and performance.
Yeah, and the offline experience. I mean, you can sell the extra costs very easily by talking about a better offline experience, by talking about the fact that you actually have people who do install it, especially on Android. We have quite a few people who actually installed the website as an application, and those are benefits that are not. I mean, if the right comparison, if you want to sell a Shopware PWA website, in my opinion, is not to make a comparison with the standard, let's say, WooCommerce website, is to sell it against an app.
Yes.
It's upscale. It's high on a higher level of the market, and it's very, in my opinion, I might be wrong, and please, anybody who thinks otherwise, step up, raise your hands. But I think it's much more convenient to do a PWA than an app. For an e-commerce website, you have much lower total cost of ownership, of maintenance. You have one single, so I mean, beside comparing whether it works on a physical iPhone and a physical Android, because which you always have to do, you have much lower costs in the long run. And to give you an example, I don't know, probably every one of us here is an Amazon client one way or another. And I would be curious to know how many of us has got the Amazon app in their cell phone. You just do it on the website. It's easy. You don't feel the need to do that. You need apps for a very, very, very specific task that cannot be accomplished otherwise. And so you can be very competitive against colleagues who maybe like to say, okay, we develop apps for a living, so we're going to try and sell you 2 custom apps with all the fancy things and etc., which you can do over Shopware, because basically the fact that Shopware can be headless and works very well as a headless platform is obviously leans itself it's very easy to attach it to an app as well, because you've got a very powerful and pretty fast API. It's pretty comprehensive and according to our experience.
Cool, great. Patrick, and your comment about budget, because probably you have this question even more often than anyone else. Yeah, what is going to be the cost of the implementation of Vue Storefront? How do you guys look at it? How do you work with the estimation? Do you also have this crystal ball?
Yeah, so basically I'm in a very good position. I can always say we are a technology vendor company and we don't do implementations. This is on the SI side. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very different, Boris, as you know, I was on the agency side as well. And you know, if there is anyone on the call that is on the agency side and estimated even one project or one sprint in his life with 100% accuracy, please raise your hand. So we all know what life is, and I would say it's very different. Depends on the scope. I saw some proof of concept going out there in just 4 weeks, and then I know there was one project being developed in Poland, and the budget was approximately like 50 to 60,000 euros. But they are also quite big already, right? So I think it's very different. I think it can be ranged between 10 to 150,000 euros if you are a big enterprise and you also need, you know, a very comprehensive features and some custom build stuff. It's gonna be, you know, more expensive. I think it's rather the question. So how we're gonna compare it if we're gonna use other platforms, because usually that's the choice that the customers will have, right? It's not the question, should I use, you know, PWA or not? It's rather, do I go with Shopware? Do I go with Shopify? Do I go with BigCommerce? It's those questions that we have to explain and answer to the merchants, and showing those battle cards and explaining, you know, what are the differences? Are you gonna go full SaaS, or do you want to have more options for, you know, customizations as you will grow? Do you want to have more code ownership or be fully dependent on the platform? Because this is where this cost and value comes, right? So it's rather being able to explain that part rather than telling customer he can't have something that costs for 100K, for 30K on this specific platform, right?
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. Right now we have time for questions. So any questions that you would have, you can write it, or you can just enable your mic and ask questions.
Yes, I have a question here. Sorry for my camera is not working at the moment. Sorry. We're an agency sitting in Düsseldorf, Germany, and we are about 18 people thinking about PWA. And my question is specifically to what about apps, plugins? How do you manage that in the project? Community store, plugins and apps.
Yeah, I think either Paolo or Patrick, maybe you can pick up this question. Paolo, with your experiences, or Patrick with just a general approach to it.
So basically, we implemented some apps plugins in the front end by just doing the code for them, and I think adding some API extra API communication for their content. And we created quite a few custom apps for specific needs we had for this project, and basically created the entry points in the APIs for them, and read from those entry points from within Shopware PWA, so it's doable. It's extensible. We did from minor to very specific things. We did like 10 or 12 custom plugins for something that some parts of the Shopware workflow weren't exactly the ones we required or the ones we expected. Some of the behaviors were like had different assumptions in terms of how things are structured, and so we did some customization. But it's doable. Obviously, it depends on your requirements and your ability or the ability of the companies you work with.
And in existing projects where you're thinking about switching to PWA and you have a lot of plugins inside who are already from the store, so you have to think about each plugin which you want to use or not to use in the future, and you have to think about going via the API and picking all the things into the front end.
So I can tell you something from our perspective, because I totally agree, and this is something we've been discussing with Shopware for a long time, that in our opinion, from our perspective, looking at the other platforms, Shopware is also heavy built on the marketplace and the availability of different plugins. And this is an issue with Shopware 6 and Shopware PWA right now. So we, as Vue Storefront, we actually start to develop the most essential plugins to show the others how to do it. So we want to motivate other technology vendors, and there are even agencies out there that make it a living developing plugins and then sell it on the marketplace. So we are going to develop some of the plugins ourselves first. We're going to release it to the marketplace. We are working on GDPR plugin. We are working on Facebook plugin. We are working on some payment plugins. So the things that you really need, and all we need right now is to really have more community members and more technology vendors to adjust those plugins for Shopware PWA. And also what is going to happen sooner or later is that we need a filter on marketplace PWA plugins, right? So this is also something we gave as a feedback to Shopware, and knowing Shopware, they are already working and trying to figure out how to do it as soon as we can.
Yeah,
I think very important. Thank you.
Yeah, I would add a question, Patrick. So if, for example, on Vue Storefront website, I can find that there is a support, for example, for a specific payment gateway and so on, and it works with Vue Storefront, would that plugin also work with Shopware PWA solution?
Yeah, so with Shopware PWA, what we can do right now, and this is recommended, this is also very similar how we approached it in the past. For Magento, we just do external checkout. So you can have PWA all the way until you click the checkout, and then you're going to have a standard Shopware 6 checkout experience, and all those plugins will just work.
Okay, so it's like a hybrid solution, yeah?
Precisely, yes.
Okay.
So maybe if I could jump in. So Paolo started to answer the question basically from the point of view, what kind of customization could you do to make a plugin work? Well, I've also covered this in the videos, and there's documentation for that. And I think to do it yourself, that's kind of doable. But the other part of the question is basically how many existing plugins out there are already compatible with PWA. And I think actually the realistic story there is that it's a limited number. So the number of extensions already supporting Shopware PWA is a little bit falling behind. And that's basically where Patrick jumped in by saying that they are dedicated in improving that story. But I think also there's another part of that story as well. So with the old way of thinking with Shopware, and I come from the Magento community, so the same story is true there. We're thinking along the lines of a monolithic system that is basically taking care of both the back end and the front end. But if we are looking for another monolith, we shouldn't go headless. So the whole goal of going headless is basically that we don't want Shopware necessarily to build all of the different front-end parts, but instead we're only looking for the toolbox. We're looking for Vue storefront, we're looking for the core architecture, we're looking for an API communication, but we're not looking for all of those ready-made extensions that are basically doing too many things in the front end, but we'd rather just build stuff ourselves. And that's kind of like a mind shift. And to get into that mind shift, first of all, you have to say out loud, Vue is easy. And if you think Vue is difficult, then you're still going to rely upon the work of others. But if Vue is simple, it basically means that you're no longer choosing a Shopware extension simply because it has Vue components, because all of those Vue components you can build yourself already. No, you're choosing actually such an extension for its API communication. So to comment upon Patrick, theoretically, we need a flag in the Shopware marketplace by saying this plugin is compatible with Shopware PWA. But likewise, we might also need a different flag simply by saying this plugin is compatible with the Store API or the Storefront API. But well, forget about the Storefront API. But in general, API-driven extensions, because that's kind of like the way that Headless is moving forward.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a shift in thinking, basically.
True. Okay, any other questions? Yise asked a question about the crystal ball, so maybe someone has a crystal ball for sale, but that's off the topic. But any other topic related to Shopware PWA?
Yeah, I'm curious, guys, about the core web vitals score of Shopware PWA. That's something which is a hot topic at the moment. Is that something which is easy to, how do you call that, improve? Or, yeah, I don't know how to ask the question otherwise. Sorry, Herbie, I didn't saw your hand.
Yes.
No, sorry, I was done.
Okay, so that would be my question. So I don't know whom of you would be able to answer such a question.
Well, so I think in general, actually, the core web vitals are nothing more than kind of like a marketing term, while actually it leads into a set of measurements, a set of metrics, and I literally have to look them up again to know them full out loud, because I'm not an SEO guru. But once you dive into the details, so one of those abbreviations in there is the largest contentful paint. And I think actually, I'm not sure if Paulo mentioned that topic, that it's kind of hard that with Vue Storefront / Shopware PWA, the initial loading time is rather long, because there's a lot of JavaScript that you need to load.
Yeah, I know that.
Well, and that's basically leading into that the LCP is a little bit higher than maybe with others. But I think also that Shopware PWA, its roadmap is just showing that that's going to be improved. That's on a technical level, the tree shaking stuff, lowering the bundle size, and etc. Another one is the first input delay. That would be something on the checkout, so that basically you're able to check out as soon as the page is loaded. Well, I think that's much more up to the design of your own theme, how you organize all of the HTML, the CSS, and how do you make sure that the interactivity is there from the start. And that's kind of like the same thing with the cumulative layout shift, which means that if the page is loading, then you don't want the page to be suddenly moving up and down because of some advertisements being lazy loaded and etc. But basically, that's up to the implementation itself. So I think along the line, but maybe there's still a couple of improvements that need to be made for Shopware PWA. So that's maybe back to a question to Patrick to say like what is on the roadmap. And another question we had earlier: when is Shopware PWA stable? So at the 1.0 release somewhere in the future, do we expect then that the core web vitals is going to be perfect? However, the other measurements, I would say that it's up to you. It's up to you to build a proper shop with the web design, with the proper enhancements, and that's where you need to come in and keep track of those performance measurements. So Patrick, do you want to say something about this as well?
About the roadmap, the roadmap is very long, but I think I mentioned already, if we're gonna talk about 6.4 and this is going live, like the stable release will be done with that part. And this is confirmed with our team. We hope to have it by the end of Q2. Of course, there is a slight chance it will be moved to Q3 as estimations are always hard, but we are focusing to finish it that quarter. That's like one of the main OKRs for us right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that with proper front-end optimization, you can lower improve all of this Web Vitals.
Yeah, so in general, like I'm really looking forward to those core Web Vitals, right? Because I hope that they will start looking more at the user experience and the fact that it's optimized for mobile, and not, as you said before, like just first time load and that's it, right? Because this is not very fair looking at PWAs and the general customer experience, because very often we see that the results on Lighthouse or web page speed test is not that good, but then when you compare like the previous version and the new one, after you play around with it, the customer experience is totally different. You take two phones, non-PWA, PWA, instant, lagging, very quick transitions, all of this kind of stuff. But the Lighthouse results is still similar, and this is not fair, right?
Yeah, but you can, I mean, beside what Patrick is gonna do to like pre-shake more code and stuff, still with our website, which is like a circus, that's so much going on in there. If you have a look at it, you can actually, with the proper optimization, go improve your Web Vitals up to a level where they're more than acceptable or even good. It's not impossible. You must keep in mind that you're gonna have a small difference that you have to overcome, because you're loading a bigger library than a static HTML only website that loads HTML, CSS, and displays everything immediately, which will always be a bit faster. But I mean, there's a difference, but it's not huge hit. You have to work at it, and we've done performance consulting for several of the projects we've done so far, and it's doable both by working on the server side and by sculpting the way you do things on the front end, changing things around, changing the way you load libraries, changing the way you load resources, and if you have a custom front end, especially it often happens that people who do the front end are maybe in a hurry, maybe have tight deadlines, maybe they're not trained to optimize performance, and there's at the end of the project there's always a big margin. I've never on every project there's always a big margin of improving things after they're finished and they're live, and getting better performance results with Google by doing the right things. It's always possible, so you shouldn't be too scared about this part, in my opinion.
Cool. Still, any other questions that you would like to ask publicly? Okay, if not, then it's not the end of the event. Sander just helped me, and he placed a link to WonderMe, where we have after party networking, so we can switch to WonderMe. If you've been through Shopware Partner Day, this is exactly the same system, so we can talk to each other in a little bit smaller groups. But before we jump and run away, on the 27th of May, we're having a next meetup related to Shopware 6 performance. So I think also an interesting topic, especially to the one we just finished. So there's also a link to Eventbrite. So if you still have a moment, you can click right now and register, not to forget about it, and get the confirmation. And if you like this event, then yeah, sign up to our notification on Shopware United. Visit the website, visit the event subpage, where you have a list of all our events, as well as a community. We try to promote any other events. So if you're organizing some meetup in any country and you would like us to help you to promote it, then please let us know. We'll try to put your event there. So as of right now, yeah, thank you for the event. Thank you to all panelists. I think it was an interesting discussion from different perspective and different approaches, sharing some experiences. And yeah, let's switch to WonderMe, and then we can have some smaller discussions. So if you had some question and you didn't have a chance, or you were just afraid to ask it publicly, I hope that all of the guys, so Isa, Paolo, Patrick, Maciej, and the rest, yeah, will be available there to have some discussions. So thank you very much, and sign up for the event on the 27th of May. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.